I wanted to do like a full treatment of the history of feminism. So I took 2.5 years and dug in super, super hard. Like I went to all the primary sources. I read all the writings of the feminists themselves as far back as I could find it, And I didn't know anything. I thought I kind of knew. I didn't know. I had no idea. And as I'm researching and I'm profiling all the different feminist activists over the last several centuries, I found this thread over and over and over that most of them were very much diametrically opposed to Christianity. They were into the occult in various forms. A lot of them were spirit mediums, tarot card readers, automatic writers. They were theosophists. They were members of the Golden Dawn, like all the different esoteric, groups that are out there. And as I kept finding this, I thought, okay, I can't ignore this aspect because I keep finding it. There's something here. There's something to this. I thought it would be more about like the funding and the politics, but I found this common spiritual thread among all of these women who were so passionate about feminism that it was like that Christianity is the patriarchy, and that's really what they were fighting. And I was shocked to find a PhD thesis by professor out of Sweden who himself is a Luciferian. So obviously he and I have different worldviews, but he found the same thing that I found. And he wrote his PhD thesis, which is a book you can buy on Amazon called Satanic Feminism. And it talks about how first wave feminism, we're talking late 1700s through the 19th century, these women openly saw Lucifer as their liberator. They wrote about it. They talked about it. And I'm like, why have I never heard that, right? So that's kind of the paradigm shatter for me, was to realize that this is a spiritual battle more than it is a political one. The politics is downstream, but that this is a spiritual thing. And even for these women that far back, they saw this as a spiritual battle more than they even saw it as a political or a financial or a social battle. So that completely changed the way that I looked at feminism and family dynamics and gender dynamics. So that's why I wrote it. And that's what really kind of blew my mind about it.
Why did you call it occult feminism?
There's two reasons. That title kind of has a dual meaning. One is because the word occult just means secret or hidden. So there's actually an entire hidden history of feminism. The history that you and I have been taught, like we just went over in the beginning of, the women were oppressed and so they had to get freedom and blah, blah, blah. That's the mainstream version we've all heard, that all the feminists were angels, heroes, brave, strong. We owe them everything, right? They were these heroes. But the secret history, the real history, has actually been gatekept by women's studies departments, by gender studies departments, which were started in 1970 by the Ford Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation to kind of astroturf the movement, to rewrite the history and make it, number one, more palatable, more appealing, especially to women of that time period who were, sexual revolutionaries, Marxists, that sort of thing. But also because there was a lot of scammery going on. There was a lot of snake oil salesmen in the movement, a lot of phonies, a lot of people who were paid and pushed to the front to be the mouthpiece, while there were other people with agendas actually behind it. So that's one aspect of the meaning. And of course, the other aspect is these women were occult practitioners in large part. A lot of them claimed to be spirit mediums or fortune tellers or tarot card readers. There were a couple I profile in the book who were high priestesses in the Golden Dawn, or they were, into espionage. They did secret insider trading deals with, wealthy industrialists of the time. So there's actually a lot of secrets hidden in the history of the feminist movement that almost nobody knows about unless they've read the book.
Some of their moving and shaking was very impressive for a bunch of oppressed, sort of like chained to an oven type women. So they're very impressive. One of the things that I like about Christianity is the fact that the religion doesn't really gaslight you about like the messed up nature of human beings. And when it comes to the messed up nature of human beings, I think that men and women also have their own things that they've got to battle with. One of the things that I find that women have to temper in their own nature is their desire to want to rule over their husbands and their desire to want to rule over men. And when I read this book, I couldn't help having this notion that women inherently have a desire to rule over men but then when men let them do it, they will hate them. And not only will they hate them, it will just expand endlessly. And it doesn't ever end until it's until it's reined in, or until it's tempered on the individual level. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. Absolutely. I agree with you on everything you just said. That's usually a layer that people don't get to until they've been thinking about this stuff and observing and kind of analyzing it for quite a while. So it's pretty impressive to me that you kind of got that pretty quickly, because the curse in Genesis for the woman is what you just described, that we're going to have this innate urge to rule over the husband, even though we desire the husband. You want the husband to be the leader. You want him to have authority. You want him to be responsible and take care of business and be a man who gets things done. But at the same time, you also kind of want to tell him what to do and how he should do it and where you think he's going wrong and criticize and things like this. Now, that's like an individual level. But on a broader, more societal level, we see the same spirit, the same attitude coming up again and again. If you guys paid attention during the American political presidential cycle we just had with Nikki Haley running for president, she's shuttered her campaign now, but the song they picked for her campaign theme was a song called Man Eater. And then she had the debate where she made a snide remark to the men about wearing heels and walking all over them and this sort of thing. So it's like, even a woman who is extremely powerful like her, I mean, she's been in some of the highest levels of government. She's a very powerful person. She still feels like she has to prove that she can do it better than the men. Then she's going to run circles around them. She's going to get in there and not only compete, but dominate them, and it's like, so you see it on every level with women, but they're never happy when they're doing that, right? The most miserable wife is one whose husband lets her do whatever she wants. Yeah. No woman wants a man who she can walk all over, yet at the same time, we're constantly shit testing and pushing boundaries. So I do think that is our struggle, just like you said. I think that's the primary thing, that once this clicks with women, I've gotten lots of DMs and emails from women where they're like, once that clicked with me, everything changed. My relationship is better. I'm more relaxed. I'm not always anxious. I'm not so depressed. I kind of understand now that I don't have to always be like fighting the patriarchy. So
yep.
Yeah, definitely agree.
I always say this, that the most happy women I know are the women who lean into their sort of femininity and their nature. And the most happy men I know are the ones who lean into their masculinity and their masculine nature and their desire to want to be a leader, and they don't listen to this sort of outside noise. I used to live in this place called Hackney Wick in London, and it was this really super duper hipster artsy sort of place. And it was just all of the gender roles were all just confused and everything was chaos. And I remember coming away from that experience being like, I don't even need any evidence, because it's so self-evidently true by just looking at people when their nature is sort of corrupted, and they get this, like, women get this like dark, really chaotic, like combative look about them, and men become feminine. It's just, yeah, I don't even need the evidence, but reading the book, it reinstills it. Now, one of the things that, I really found interesting was the ancient gods that you talk about at the start. We've got Inanna, Ishtar, which is a Sumerian god. And I looked into the mythology of it a little bit more. And Inanna was actually rejected by Gilgamesh in Sumerian mythology. And then Inanna killed one of Gilgamesh's friends and then sent the heavenly bull to come and attack Gilgamesh. I was like, I feel like I'm watching an episode of whatever podcast, like just hearing the stories.
It's true. And you actually, the reason I started the book with that was to kind of demonstrate that people think this is a new thing, that this is a recent thing. This goes back to the very beginning of the oldest tales we have in humankind, in every culture, in every religion, and it repeats over and over. I also go into like the goddess Kali, whose consort Shiva, her male counterpart, had to throw himself under her feet and let her step on him to keep her from destroying the world out of pure wrath, right? And like Lilith, the legend of the demon Lilith, and how she refused to be beneath Adam and became like a killer of infants. And
I was literally thinking when I was reading that, I was like, they had this argument, Lilith and Adam, and Lilith is like, I will not be beneath you, and Adam's like, come on, like, just nothing changes. It's just the same thing that's happening today.
It's true. It's a tale as old as time, and that's why I think But I think that what that tells you, and people who think that this kind of stuff is conspiracy, I always tell them it's, that's the wrong way to think about it. It's more like, because people say, well, how can it be the same thing every time all the way throughout history? It's because the same spirit is behind it. Now, whether you're Christian like me, who believes literally there are actual spirits, curses, things of that nature behind it, or you're a person who doesn't want to buy into that, I understand, that's fine. You could say it's the same attitude, it's the same spirit in the more secular sense of like the spirit of the age, right? It's a tale as old as time. It seems to be a central thing that human beings can't get away from, no matter what time or culture you live in. There might be some differences in how it manifests, but yeah, it's like you could look at these ancient tales and say they do look just like a whatever podcast, right? And all of us experience this struggle in relationships. Everybody does. That's why these dating podcasts are so popular. I know some people hate them. They think they're terrible, but I think they're very valuable in a way that they kind of descriptively illustrate for us this struggle.
If you enjoyed that reality-based podcast clip and you want to get early access to all upcoming episodes, then join our community at Locals, rattlesnaketv.locals.com. Furthermore, if you prefer the Audible version, then you can find the reality-based podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all major streaming platforms. All those links will be below. See you there.